Hello, I'm Matt Reardon, and thanks for watching this Wednesday evening, May 24th West Weather Update, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. The graphic we're looking at to start here, this is the Snowpack liquid equivalent across the Sierra Nevadas in California for this water year, plus the reservoir waters allocated on top of that. That's that orange graphic you can see there on the graph. The peak of the combination of those two, kind of the peak of our water year, was really back in early April, where we had nearly 50 million acre feet of water held up at elevation in California. Tremendous amount of water. To kind of put that in perspective, Lake Tahoe, the large lake up in the Sierra Nevadas, very deep lake too, second deepest lake in the United States, is about 120 million acre feet. So nearly half of Lake Tahoe, in terms of water volume, is held up or was held up in California in those reservoirs and the snowpack. And we still have a significant amount of water still there to potentially melt through and cause issues. Maybe even 35 million acre feet here at the end of May, a really staggering number. Maybe to put that in comparison, Lake Erie, one of the Great Lakes, of course, in the eastern United States, is pushing 400 million acre feet. So 35 million acre feet is about 10% of the water volume of Lake Erie, which obviously is very visible from space, this huge lake. And we're even kind of in that same order of magnitude, talking about how much water is up in the elevations of California. It's a staggering amount. Now, it has been decreasing, of course, over the last few weeks due to that snow melt that's caused concerns. We've discussed the Tulare Lake flooding. We can now see that from space, this blue color you can see here in the San Joaquin Valley of California. That's that ancient Tulare Lake bed now refilling as a result of the record rain and snowfall that we saw in California. And then our handy Lake Tahoe, to kind of put it in perspective, up here further toward the north in central California, now kind of rivaling the surface area of Lake Tahoe, is the Tulare Lake bed, albeit a very shallow, kind of temporary lake right now, but still causing a number of issues in terms of flooding very arable land in the San Joaquin Valley. Now, further to the east, we've seen news just recently in the Colorado River Valley, the federal government reaching an agreement with a number of states, notably Arizona, California, Nevada, to reduce water use or water conservation on the Colorado River, I believe 3 million acre feet by 2026. To kind of put that in perspective, we were just talking about, a record 50 million acre feet in California. So an agreement there, kind of in the backdrop of an improving water situation across the Colorado River. This picture we're looking at here is a graphic of Lake Powell reservoir levels on the Glen Canyon Dam in Arizona. And if we just look over the last few weeks here since April and into May, we've seen a rapid increase in those lake levels, that record snowmelt in Utah and northern Arizona, getting into the rivers now, into the river networks, making its way into the Colorado River proper, starting to fill up these reservoirs, Lake Powell and Lake Mead specifically, which are at very low, record low levels potentially in just the last few months here. Now, if we jump ahead and look at just daytime weather patterns today, looking at visible satellite imagery, valid as of this afternoon on Wednesday, a few stories I wanted to touch on here. We talked last week about how we'd have this kind of daily cadence of thunderstorm activities peaking in the afternoon. Well, we're seeing that right here. If we look across central Nevada, shower and storm chances associated with the clouds here. If we look into parts of eastern Idaho, showers and storms trying to make their way into the Snake River Valley here, blowing off the mountains at elevation in southern Idaho. And then some lingering showers, weaker ones comparably, in northeast Washington as well. If I look at the forecast, take this through the next 7 days or so, I think we're going to see a similar story, kind of these daily shower and thunderstorm activities in central and western Nevada, where we do have some arable acreages here in western Nevada surrounding Reno and to areas south of there. And if I take this through, you'll notice that Thursday afternoon, another peak in shower and thunderstorm activity, for parts of Idaho, parts of Nevada, even the leeward or eastern slopes of the Sierra Nevadas, and getting in at times to parts of eastern Washington as well. If I take this through Friday afternoon, similar area of focused precipitation, parts of Idaho, central and western Nevada, leeward side of the Sierra Nevadas, and then parts of Washington and Oregon weaker. If I take this into Sunday, you'll notice a similar pattern here all the way out into Monday of next week, and that pattern continues of these shower and storm chances, perhaps again focusing more on Nevada and parts of Idaho rather than Washington. If I take this all the way out to Wednesday, you'll notice again a very similar picture painted here to what was painted all the way at the beginning, that picture I just showed you of the visible satellite loop of the shower and thunderstorm activity over parts of Nevada and Idaho. So very consistent story over the next 7-day forecast. Weather's kind of getting into predictable nature here as we go into summer across the western region. If we just look at precipitation anomalies across the west here for the next 7 days, this is really just kind of summing up the forecast I just showed you. Not a surprise to see our bullseye here over central and western Nevada, and then parts of Idaho as well. and then perhaps some precipitation getting up to normal levels in eastern Washington and parts of Oregon as well. And there's the leeward slopes. The Sierra Nevadas popping off the map there as well. Now, temperatures over the same time period, generally warmer to the north in Washington, parts of Idaho, Montana, Oregon, getting cooler further south, particularly over Nevada and California, kind of underneath some of the upper level troughing that I'll show you in just a moment here. Parts of the coastal California have been very cool lately, really kind of going all the way back to the beginning of the year, 2023. Oxnard, all the way up to San Francisco, south central coast, all the way down through LA and San Diego. It's just been kind of a cooler start to the year. What was first at the beginning of the year as a result of the atmospheric river sequence we had. In fact, if I jump this over and look at Oxnard, California, year-to-date temperatures, that black line running through the middle of this graphic are normal temperatures typically as we go through the year for Oxnard, California. The graphic that we've seen in 2023 here, this blue color is where we've been below average, far outnumbering, right, the days we've been above average here in those red shadings. So it's been a cold start to the year. Again, kind of at the beginning, more a result of those atmospheric rivers, but now just over the last few weeks and looking out into that 7-day forecast, potentially beyond, it's really a result of that onshore flow pushing that ocean marine layer inland, cooling the temperatures down, bringing that fog layer in, that May gray that we get typically this time of year. But it's been even cooler than average relative to that. Now, if we want to look out beyond that, I'll take a look at the upper level height pattern here. I want to stress how kind of stuck or persistent the pattern that we've been in and will continue to be. This is looking at 500 millibar heights, kind of trying to get a picture of where the ridges or the troughs will set up in the atmosphere and might influence our weather. This is averaged over 5 days, so it's kind of a 5-day moving window here, starting out here Wednesday evening all the way out into next Tuesday. And you'll notice lower heights troughing in California and Nevada. That's keeping those temperatures down there we just looked at in the forecast, helping to promote precipitation downstream of this trough. And the Intermountain West here that we just talked about, those shower and thunderstorm activities, generally warmer to the north of that, but not substantially so. We're not talking about heat waves in any event over the next few days here, but warmer temperatures across Washington, Idaho, and Montana. As I take that 5-day moving window and roll it all the way out into next week, you'll notice not a major change coming in terms of the forecast. In fact, pretty consistent. Higher heights across Washington, Idaho, Montana, promoting warmer weather there. We still have that troughing over California, parts of Nevada and Arizona, keeping temperatures down there. Onshore flow will continue for those coastal communities. Intermountain West precipitation chances lingering. And now this 5-day window, I pushed it all the way out Monday of next week out to Saturday. So really the work week of next week, we don't see a major change in that forecast time period. If we take a look at the Climate Prediction Center forecast for this same time period, I'll jump over to that, the 6 to 10 day outlook. So this is looking May 30th to June 3rd. Again, warmer temperatures, more likely than not, in parts of Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana. We kind of have this neutral zone as we go through Nevada, and then cooler temperatures south of there underneath the influence of that upper level trough. But really the bullseye in precipitation, parts of Nevada, particularly western and central Nevada, where we saw those kind of more intense thunderstorm probabilities in the afternoon, really every day of the forecast, at least the 7-day forecast I just showed you, and then out even further than that into next week. And like many places across the western region, if we look at year-to-date precip for western Nevada, this is specifically Reno, Nevada. Again, that black line is their normal year-to-date precip for this time here in May. You can see we're essentially double that. We've had double the precipitation this year in Reno, Nevada, up to 10 inches. And based on the forecast, I'd expect this to continue to increase as a result of just those thunderstorm activity and chances in the afternoon. Someone is bound to luck out and get a substantial amount of precipitation from that. That being said, I don't expect it to be significantly widespread. It's going to be more hard to predict, but eventually, right, you get so many of these daily chances of thunderstorms, the probability that one finally makes it to your county or your town becomes pretty high by the end of the week. Now, if we want to forecast beyond that, getting out into early June, the influence of the Madden-Julian Oscillation wanes this time of year. The MJO being this kind of quasi-circulation, roams around the equator of the Earth and really in the form of convective activity and can influence our jet stream and kind of shake up a pattern that we've been stuck in like the one we're in now. Unfortunately, in May, and you'll notice in this graphic, the MJO has been very much stalled in the western Pacific Ocean, and that a lot of the convective activity has kind of stalled over there just east of Indonesia in the western Pacific. Really beginning around May 9th, May 7th, we saw it quickly moving into phase 6. I mentioned the possibility that it could go from 6 to 7 to 8, which would really kick up and change the pattern across the western region of the U.S. But it had other ideas. It stalled into phase 6 all the way through the 17th and 18th of May, finally slowly lingering into phase 7, and now the forecast in red here in blue. Not much change expected over the next 7 days, lingering again in phase 7 in the Western Pacific and eventually arriving to what's essentially null space, or weakening perhaps to a significant degree here by the end of the month. And that's, I think, kind of preventing a major pattern change out west that I posed as a possibility, certainly in an earlier forecast. The result of that is this pattern that we're in: warm north, cooler south, precipitation in the interior in the form of those afternoon thunderstorm and shower chances. I think it's going to continue for some time. And if I jump back to that Climate Prediction Center forecast, even the 8 to 14 day outlook, which is really just the first week of June at this point, we see a similar story. Warm to the north, eastern Washington, western Montana, central and northern Idaho. As you go further south, starts to get cooler under the influence of that upper level troughing in the southern western region of the U.S. And then there's that daily, you can just kind of see that daily precipitation chance lingering in the Intermountain West. If I take this even to the week 3 to 4 outlook, which I don't show very often because we're getting pretty far out in the forecast here, this is really looking through the first kind of half of June here. Similar story: warm to the north, perhaps more focused on Washington. And there's those Intermountain West shower and storm chances, cooler to the south in Arizona and California. So this kind of stuck pattern we're in looks to linger, certainly through the long-term part of the forecast. I will show the 1-month outlook from the Climate Prediction Center that came out since the last video was recorded. Right now, they're predicting warmer temperatures for Washington, Oregon, northern Idaho. You can see those Intermountain West precipitation changes extended more to the east. There is some kind of model support that jet stream, that upper level troughing, will start to extend north and weaken a bit, which would help to push some of those thunderstorm activity off to the east and out of this area. But right now, not a major signal either direction other than that kind of warm north pattern to continue, and perhaps some warmth getting in to parts of the desert southwest, a bit more toward the eastern half of that there, but not a huge signal either way here. One thing we're not seeing on this graphic that I think is good news is a major heat wave pushing into California or Nevada, an area, of course, right, that has a lot of that snowpack still to melt through. If we can melt that slower, that will reduce the risk of that kind of catastrophic flooding that's still lingering, albeit waning, as these kind of colder or at least more seasonal temperatures have settled into the forecast here in that 7 to 14 day time range. If we look at the monthly forecast from the European model, we just looked at the monthly forecast from the Climate Prediction Center. This is now looking at the temperature anomaly forecast over the 30 days, June to July 1st. I think we see a similar story here, certainly in comparison to the Climate Prediction Center. Warmer to the north, right? Similar story that we've been talking about. Cooler, or at least more seasonable to the south. That would include parts of California, perhaps Nevada under the influence of some of that precipitation, and then all the way through Arizona and Southern California as well. Again, the risk for kind of a big June heat wave, I think, is decreasing now as some of these forecast models come into agreement here that we're just likely to continue with this troughing in the southern western region, keeping temperatures down, helping to slow the melt of that snowpack that we just talked about, that kind of half of Lake Tahoe that's still sitting up in the upper elevations of California. Precipitation over this time period, kind of curiously, the European model has shifted a bit further north with some of that kind of what I'll call, again, that daytime thunderstorm activity into parts of eastern Washington, into eastern Oregon or the Treasure Valley and western Idaho as well. It's hard to pinpoint, specific areas like this when we're talking about a whole 30-day forecast. So whether or not, this precipitation bullseye shifts from eastern Washington, perhaps into parts of eastern Nevada or Utah, not clear right now. There is some disagreement there in model activity, and summer thunderstorms are just hard to forecast. You might wake up with a 30% chance of showers and thunderstorms. You go out to plan your daily activity and one just kind of comes off the elevations at the right time and can spoil a day pretty quickly. That's just the nature of kind of summer thunderstorm forecasting. So hard to pinpoint specific valleys or geographies to that extent, but nonetheless, the chances there for, I would say, the whole Intermountain West for increased shower and thunderstorm activities as we go through June. We showed the June forecast from the Climate Prediction Center already. I'll just finish by saying that we are continuing on our way to El Nino. The development there has been pretty consistent. This graphic is looking at ocean temperatures, specifically over the central tropical Pacific. That's the El Nino index. And we can see at least since March, we've seen a steady uptick in the warmer waters there in the central tropical Pacific, inching our way again toward El Nino this summer. A slight drop off here in the last few weeks. We're expecting this activity to continue as we go into June, warming the ocean temperatures there. Kind of another area we've seen ocean temperatures change is in the northeast Pacific. So we talked about this negative PDO signature we've held on to all spring, influencing our weather pattern. Well, we've started to erode that and bring these warmer colors in, the warmer ocean temperatures into the Northeast Pacific. I think that's helped to influence this pattern of warmer weather to the north in parts of Washington, Idaho, and Oregon, but the cooler waters here lingering in kind of what I'll call the southern portion of that negative PDO signature, I think helping to influence or entrench that pattern of colder weather in the southern portion of the western region and increase the precipitation chances across Nevada. So kind of these two oceanic features coupled together, I think only increases the predictive capacity of that forecast for June, reducing the risk for heat waves in California, increasing the warm chances lingering for Washington, Idaho, Oregon, and Montana, and then increasing the precipitation chances in the form of those afternoon thunderstorms through June in the Intermountain West. And then El Nino, a higher likelihood than not that we'll see that at some point this summer in 2023. If that comes true and holds through the winter of 2023, the Colorado River Basin, an area where that's been obviously heavily talked about and debated in terms of water use and conservation and all that, could be looking at 2 years in a row of favorable precipitation patterns. That's quite a ways away. We'll tackle that when we get to it. Thank you for watching.